Now, from CBS News Miami, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and this week, Governor Ron DeSantis made his long-expected entry into the presidential race. But rather than a glorious launch, his announcement on Twitter became something of an embarrassment, filled with glitches and false starts. But even when the audio-only event finally got underway nearly 30 minutes late, rather than a freewheeling discussion promised by Elon Musk, DeSantis appeared to just read a speech and then answered carefully orchestrated questions from people who have already endorsed him. The hour-long event spent more time discussing the virtue of Twitter and the greatness of Elon Musk as it did on addressing the needs of the American people. But it's a long campaign, and anyone who counts DeSantis out is making a mistake. He may be behind in the polls to Donald Trump, but DeSantis is planning on spending more than $200 million to try and win the nomination. Which brings us to my guest this week, Lev Parnas. You may remember the Ukrainian-American businessman was a central character in the scandal surrounding Donald Trump's first impeachment. Working with Rudy Giuliani, Parnas sought damaging information from Ukrainian government officials on Hunter Biden in 2019. That same year, he would also be arrested and ultimately convicted of defrauding investors and accused by federal prosecutors of illegally funneling Russian oligarch money into American campaigns. Now, after Parnas' arrest, DeSantis announced he was turning over to the federal government a $50,000 donation from one of Parnas' companies to his 2018 campaign.
This was a guy who, at RNC functions, Trump victory functions, he was at a lot of these things, was, I think, viewed as one of the top supporters of the president in Florida. And so it was just like any other donor, nothing more than that.
In his first television interview about DeSantis, I spoke to Parnas, who was recently released from prison and is completing his sentence at his home in Boca Raton. He argues that his relationship with DeSantis went far beyond what the governor is saying, and he showed me more than 60 text messages that he said were between him and DeSantis.
First time I met Ron was sometime in May of 2018. I was a frequent person at the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. At that time I was living there more than I was living in my house. We were in the lobby after some event, and then Ron approached me. At the time, I really didn't know who he was. He was a congressman. I saw him a couple of times, maybe several times on Fox News because he was a big Trump supporter at the time, but really didn't understand who he was. He approached me, introduced himself to me, gave me his card, and told me that I'm the guy that he was told to see. I asked him what was it about. He told me that he's running for governor of Florida and that he really, wanted to try somehow get Trump's endorsement, Trump's support. And he told me that he was aware that he was told that because of my relationship with Trump and Rudy that I could make it happen.
What were your impressions of him when you met him?
When I first met him, I didn't think anything one way or the other. He was a congressman. He was somebody that I definitely wanted to be introduced to and, have a relationship with. But at the time, I was a big Adam Putnam fan and supporter. So it was, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think it was going to go much places. I thought it was going to be just like anything else, a meeting and exchange cards, phone numbers, and, see you later. We'll see you at another event or something. But Ron then was very persistent on wanting to meet again. And I don't know if it was a day or two later, but we met up again at the Trump International Hotel, started speaking more about, how, he would be a great governor for the state of Florida and how he's a huge Trump supporter and how he's on Fox News every day supporting about the Russian collusion, the Russian hoax, all of this. And at the time I was drinking the Kool-Aid and I was a huge Trump supporter myself. And I think it was that day or the day before I got news that Trump wasn't too happy with Adam Putnam because of certain articles that were brought to his attention that Adam spoke not too nicely of him when he was running against Jeb Bush because Adam was a Jeb Bush guy. So Trump wasn't going to support Adam Putnam and not endorse him. So at the time, Ron also was very persistent and really, he was really nice at the time. I can't say anything of it. But I also had another problem because I was a very big cannabis supporter, and I knew Ron at the time was not. He was anti-cannabis, and I made it clear to him. I said to him, "Listen, Ron," I said, "it's very difficult for me to support somebody that is going to go against things that I'm going to want in the state of Florida."
Because you wanted to open up dispensaries. You want to be involved
Right.
in the marijuana market.
Correct. I wanted to be, because it was expanding. I felt that was the future. I actually even had meetings with Trump about that, discussing that he should be supporting cannabis a lot more. And I told him that. And that's when Ron turned around to me and said, "You know what? I would be open to thinking differently about cannabis if you were to get me Trump support." And we kept talking that day, and then we continued. We exchanged phone numbers. I think it was the day before. He started calling me every day. We started talking, and then eventually we kind of became like friends. All of a sudden, next thing you know, we're like, on a very, very friendly atmosphere. So at some point, either a week or two later, I approached Rudy, and I had a conversation with Rudy, and I told him about Ron. He didn't know Ron. He didn't know anything about him at the time. I told him he's, a heavy Trump supporter. He's somebody that would be on our side. He's somebody that believes in the same values, believes in the same thing as Trump, and he would be somebody that Trump would be good for Trump in Florida.
Here's the only thing that is a little off with the way you're presenting this, is because Trump had already sent out a very positive tweet encouraging DeSantis to run for governor in December of 2017.
Correct.
And I think everyone assumed that he was going to endorse DeSantis.
That's why it's not good to assume, because you know what assume stands for. Don't make a out of you and me. Yes, he sent out a tweet, but that was it. That was, DeSantis was on a flight with him, and, DeSantis thought that he would get more support, but Trump never came out and endorsed him. And DeSantis really needed his endorsement because his numbers were really lacking.
Formal endorsement. He wanted a formal endorsement.
Correct, because he needed a formal endorsement because his numbers, Adam Putnam was beating him bad in Florida, and his numbers were not looking good. So he needed Trump support, and he needed more than just a tweet. And at that time, Trump wasn't even tweeting about Ron. That was the one tweet he did when they were together in December, and after that, there was nothing in between. So Ron understood that that was just because he was there with him, with Matt Gaetz on the plane, and it was just one of those things that he got Trump to do, which Trump does a lot of times. He's at the spur of the moment type of guy. So
well, how obsessed or how important was getting a formal Trump endorsement to Ron DeSantis?
Well, there was the whole campaign. I mean, if he wouldn't get it, he wouldn't be governor of Florida today. We wouldn't be talking about him. He'd still be the congressman if he won, and that's it. So, I mean, that was the ball game. He understood that, with Trump's support, with the MAGA rally behind him, people behind him, that he would be able to win the election if he got Trump. So that was the only way he could win the election, with Trump support.
You say you became close, friendly with him, friends with him.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
During that campaign in 2018, the Daily Beast did a story that was raising questions that sort of started, in a lot of ways, the investigation that ended
Correct.
up in you being indicted. DeSantis sent you a copy of that story, and what was he trying to figure out? And he was well aware of that, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody in not only DeSantis crew, but in the Trump campaign, America First, everybody knew, and they were highly so. They said it was fake news. DeSantis actually sent me a text saying that Daily Beast is writing fake articles again. They were very supportive. They basically didn't agree with the article, just like we didn't agree with the article, and it was nothing. Another day in Trump world.
But it didn't deter Ron DeSantis from continuing the relationship with
absolutely not. Absolutely not. If anything, our relationship was even stronger because the elections were getting closer. No, it didn't deter him at all.
When we come back, more of my exclusive interview with Lev Parnas. Welcome back. We continue our exclusive interview with Lev Parnas. I asked him what went through his mind when he heard DeSantis trying to downplay their relationship back in 2019.
Well, that just shows you his true colors. I mean, at the time, I didn't pay too much attention. I mean, it was hurtful. it was upsetting, but they were all doing it. They were following in Trump's footsteps and lying their teeth out and basically denying they knew me. And they thought that was just going to pass by. They didn't realize that I retained all my text messages, emails, pictures, videos, and that I would have so much information to contradict what they were saying. They thought, that I would be so wound up in tune with my own legal problems that I wouldn't have time to deal with them. But
so why are you talking now?
well, now is a different time in life. I mean, the governor is now planning to announce that he's running for president, and my whole time since I've been arrested and since I've been incarcerated and came out, all I've been trying to do is make right and tell the truth about what transpired in the 4 years I was in the Trump world. Everything that transpired with Trump, with Rudy, with the Ukraine mess, with Venezuela, and a lot of other stuff. The governor never came up. There was never anybody asking questions about Ron DeSantis. Now when he started running for president, I felt it was my duty to get the truth out, because it's for the people to see exactly who Ron DeSantis is.
And answer that question. Who is Ron DeSantis?
Ron is like that snake in the weeds, where he'll be quiet, lay there and strike you when you're not least expecting it. He'll play the game with you. He'll laugh. He'll pretend. He'll do what it takes. But then once he has the power and the reins, is when then all of a sudden he comes out and shows you his true colors.
A lot of people will hear you say this and say that you can't be trusted, that you've been convicted on trying to defraud investors in a company, that given your track record, that the things you say now shouldn't be taken seriously. How would you respond to that?
Well, you have to look at life as well. People make mistakes. I mean, what I've done, and I'm paid the price for it, and I'm currently still paying the price for it. That doesn't mean that my whole life that's who I am, or my whole life that's who I was. There's plenty of people that's been convicted and now are doing great things in this world. Look at Martha Stewart, and look at other people. The people make mistakes and they come out. And as far as believe me, well, I have the receipts, I have the facts. I mean, the governor said he doesn't know me. Meanwhile, here you see 60 text messages, emails, and all of that, the relationship, that you could see the conversation. So sometimes, you have to make your choice and see who you could believe and who you don't want to believe. But I have no reason to lie. I'm doing this because I want to get the truth out. I want to make my wrongs right. And I mean, let the people judge for what they want. But I got the receipts.
When you were helping to raise money for him, helping with Rudy Giuliani, getting him to tweet, all those sorts of things, what was it that you wanted at the end of the day? What were you hoping to get out of the relationship with Ron DeSantis?
Well, at the time, I considered him my friend, and I wanted him to become governor of Florida, eventually president of the United States. And, like any other person, I mean, it's a great privilege to have somebody that powerful to be your friend. From a business aspect, I was looking to build cannabis companies in the state of Florida. We had an oil and gas company that we were expanding on at the time. So, I mean, to have friends in such high places, I mean, it's a huge benefit. And, that's what I expected, to be able to have that relationship with them going forward.
In 2018, did you think he was going to be running for president someday?
Oh, absolutely.
Did he ever talk about running for president?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was his main goal. Florida was just a stepping stone.
Did he say that? What exactly did he say that gave you that impression?
We've had several conversations where, I mean, his plan was to run for 2024, because he thought Trump was going to win. What we discussed is we thought, and in that circle, that Trump was going to win 2020, and then 2024 would be Ron's time to take over.
And he actually talked about that.
Correct.
He talked about that his plan as early as 2018, before even winning the governor's race in 2018, he was already looking ahead to 2024.
Ron has high ambitions. The governor, like I said, governor of Florida was just a stepping stone. Being congressman was a stepping stone. But he was always looking at the high chair. When
he won the governor's race, you anticipated, you said, being on the transition team. Tell me why you thought you'd be on the transition.
Well, he promised it to me. Ron told me that I'd be on the transition team, and the other thing he promised me was he was setting up a special position or a special group or a team, I don't know what it was called, after the shooting in Parkland. He was going to put a group together that would be influential in looking at the schools and dealing with what proper things to put into place, laws and stuff like that. And he told me that would be a good team for me to be on. So we discussed a lot of that. He told me once, because one of the things that I was looking for was, I got into a world of politics. I was never involved in politics, you have to understand, Jim. I mean, I've never voted before, and then when I got involved with Trump, it was a whirlwind, and here I was in the middle of the most powerful men and politicians in the world, and I didn't have that same credibility. I didn't have the bloodline, so it was difficult for me sometimes, to look at them, look at me, and say, who is this guy? I mean, this guy's a street guy from Brooklyn, and what's he doing here? But because of my relationships with Trump or Rudy or some other people in the Republican Party, they had to bow down. But I knew they would always talk behind my back and make smirks and stuff like that. So I wanted to start establishing myself with some sort of a background, and I felt it would be a great way for me to be on a transition team on the governor of Florida, and he also agreed with me at that time.
I want to understand the foreign money that was coming into campaigns in the United States, and particularly Ron DeSantis' campaign. You ended up helping secure about $50,000 from a Russian national who was working with you, correct, on the cannabis business. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean,
did you realize that at the time that that you couldn't do that you couldn't bring in foreign money to a campaign?
Well, it was it was a little bit convoluted the way, even with our conviction, the way it happened, because till this day nobody could say what money that really was, because what happened was Igor Fruman, my partner at the time, was funding our endeavors, our donations, and our company that we were building up. At the same time, Igor had lots of different businesses overseas. The money would be coming into that account where he was sending money in from. And one of the deals that we were working on was with that Russian national. At the time, I didn't even know he was a Russian national because he spoke fluent English. He had cannabis companies here in the United States, so I assumed that, he was all right. And we were doing business with him. I knew he was Russian, but I didn't know that, if
he wasn't a U.S. citizen.
Right, I wasn't aware if he was or he wasn't. I didn't ask him but knowing that he was already invested millions of dollars in U.S. cannabis company, for me, that was fine. He started investing money into a company. We started out with him together to try to build different cannabis companies all over the country, and Florida being one of those places. And we donated to Ron, and the government said that money was from him. I can't confirm or deny at the time because it was never actually directly from that money. It was from an account that money came in from different places. So, but the government said, I guess, that money was then given to Ron.
You talked about, him distancing himself from you, basically ignoring you after he wins the election. How did you take that? Were you angry? Were you?
Oh, I was pissed. I was extremely pissed, and that's why I think in some of the emails when I recover them and look into them and see, I think there'll be some interesting stuff to see how Ron reacted to that. But Ron.
Why were you angry?
Because he basically. He played along. I thought he's my friend. I thought he was gonna, be a good governor. I thought all of this. We had all these ambitions, all these plans, and all of a sudden, once he became governor, he pretended like, he has no time for me. And all of a sudden, the transition team, I don't get approved on. I get an email from Susie Wild telling me that I wasn't approved on the transition team, the conversation. You could start seeing that he was, it's like something's wrong. This is, overnight. This is not the person that, just now was calling me at 12 o'clock at midnight, asking me where we're going to meet the next morning. You know what I'm saying? All of a sudden. So I was very pissed off, and there was emails going back and forth, text messages going back and forth, and eventually he met with me, and we had a private meeting off the record on somewhere, and it was in Palm Beach Private Airport. And right before he was taking off. He was doing some event here down in South Florida.
When was this?
This was January 17th, 18th, somewhere around there.
Of 2019.
2019, yeah.
So had he been sworn in yet? Yeah, he was governor officially.
He was already governor, yeah. I think he was already governor.
And what was that meeting like?
At the meeting, Ron was playing Ron again. He calmed me down, explaining to me that, you know, that he's just now very busy, and because of my background, you know, that he has to, you know, publicly that he's my boy and that we're still friends, and that if, you know, I need anything, he just can't be, I can't be too associated publicly, and I couldn't understand why, because, I mean, there was nothing different from a week ago when you were calling me at midnight. And then he told me that he was getting, that the phone that he had now that he's governor would be able to be looked at any time, and those records could be FOIA or something like that. So he gave me another phone number. He said that was just for personal people that only his close people had, that nobody knew about, that to communicate on that phone. And we spoke then a couple of times after that, but then I got really entangled up with Ukraine, with Trump and Rudy, and really, you know, faded away, you know, with our community. I had no reason to call him. He didn't call me, and then I got arrested in the summertime of 2019.
He said, "You're still my boy."
Those were his words, yeah.
What did you take that to mean?
I mean, I thought we were boys, yeah. I thought, you know, we were friends, you know, that I thought he was appreciative. I thought he was happy with the way I helped him, because Ron won that race so closely that there's not one thing that made him win. A lot of things had to have happened for him to win. And I was one of those things. If I didn't get him the Trump endorsement, he would have not won. If I didn't go get support and get rally behind all those people and get those votes, he wouldn't have won. If that Gillum thing didn't happen, he wouldn't have won. I mean, so basically everything had to come into place for him to win by those very short skin of his teeth margin. So I was a big, intricate part of helping him win, and I thought that meant something. And I thought that, you know, he would, you know, look highly upon that. But to him, it was just another thing. And that's the scary part about somebody like Ron, that, you know, there's no loyalty, there's no, you know, somebody that appreciates a friendship or stuff. He just, you know, on to the next one. You know, he uses you for what he needs and then moves on to the next one and doesn't even lose one night of sleep over it.
I reached out to the DeSantis campaign regarding Parnas, but they did not respond. A spokesman for DeSantis told Reuters, which first reported Parnas' alleged text messages with DeSantis, "This is another recycled narrative that has been proven wrong many times over." We'll be right back. Thanks for joining us. You can reach me at jdefede@cbs.com and follow me on Twitter @DeFede. We'll be back again next week. Until then, stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day.